My story with this manga begins with me hearing about it from someone else. But I never got around to actually reading it. Other manga like Gachiakuta and Shadow House got in the way. Not that I never tried, I gave it a few attempts but it never managed to stick with me. But now that I've been looking to cover more furry things, I figured why not take a look at Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger. Of course, a link to where you can buy the books is in the description. Also, spoiler alert for Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger and also the most recent chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. Why Jujutsu Kaisen, you ask? Just watch the video and you'll find out. The world we're introduced to in the first few chapters is pretty standard. Anthro animals and humans living together, mass hysteria. Okay, not really mass hysteria, everything's fine. This is a chill slice of life manga, but there are some details I wish were explored more. Like, we see in a flashback that the protagonist has a human mother and a tiger father, but that detail is never really addressed. Granted, the mechanics of furry on human births aren't really super necessary to a slice of life manga about a wolf and tiger going out to eat, so I'm just gonna put it aside and digress. Despite the name of the series being Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger, the real protagonist is just a tiger, Yanagi Kagetora. He's, okay, I know this is gonna sound stupid, so just bear with me. Like Sasuke, he's slower, more methodical, and despite putting up a front, all up in his own head. The manga's deuteragonist, the person of second importance in a story, is the Ramen Wolf, Mitajiro. He pairs up well with Kagetora because, like Naruto, he's loud and boisterous, definitely a bit weird and goofy, but also the heart which brings out Kagetora's more emotional side. The dynamic works. Kagetora plays the straight man to Jiro's goofy antics, but at the same time, he quietly loves Jiro and all of his vivacity. That's due to contrast, a concept I mentioned in my last video. P.S. Go watch it. Contrast is a literary technique of highlighting differences or similarities by directly opposing two things. Like in Ruri Dragon, the contrast is primarily used to highlight the differences in the way characters think and what they say. While Kagetora never outwardly tells Jiro how much he likes eating with him, it's clear from his inner dialogue that it means a lot. That being said, I think the early chapters are the weakest. The manga takes a slow approach to telling its story, taking its time to introduce you to these characters and the main conflict. That sadly comes at the cost of incentive to continue reading. Yes, this manga is cute, but so is Yatsubatsu, and the latter is much cuter, so why would I read this instead of that? And while the concept behind Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger isn't bad, it doesn't have much going for it. These early chapters are just so okay. These chapters honestly feel more like one-shots rather than pieces of a singular whole, and I think that's due to a lack of overall connecting conflict. In writing terms, conflict can be defined as what the character wants and what gets in the way of their desires. There is a main source of conflict in the manga, but it's not given to us immediately, rather it's a slow drip feed of information. That means the chapters themselves have to have their own self-contained conflict, which I just couldn't find myself connecting with. I do think the author was aware of this because a few characters are quickly introduced to inject some variety into these self-contained plots. Kuroda, the panther womanizer who's often the butt of the joke, Harima, the human who's more aware of those around him than they know, and Hiro, the horse who's friends with Harima. They give the early parts of the manga a much needed way to spice things up, letting it use the other characters to tell different jokes and bring in new plots outside of simply going to a restaurant. Like taking the entire group on a picnic to watch the cherry blossoms bloom. My favorite way these side characters are used to add variety is when we get these special chapters focused on Harima. Do you remember that one episode from The Amazing World of Gumball? Wow, that is a weird reference even for me. Where it was a series of character-based shorts rather than a singular focused plot. It's like that, exploring the characters in a really fun and really cute way. Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger only really finds its drive at around chapter 4. The plot of this chapter is that Jiro and Kagetora were going to eat together, but Jiro ended up getting sick. Kagetora ends up making him a bowl of rice porridge, hoping he gets better soon so they can go out to eat again. It's nice, it's simple, it's cute. But more importantly, this is the chapter where we get our first good look at, well, he's not the antagonist, but he's definitely the object of obsession for our dear protagonist, Kagetora's older brother, Akitora. We get hints of their relationship throughout the series from as early as chapter 2, small snippets and scenes that hint at something deeper. It contrasts from the overall jovial chapters of the manga in a wonderful way, giving Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger a tone that's like, dark chocolate. It's definitely sweet, but there's also this rich bitterness that sometimes overpowers the sugar. It's a slow drip feed of information that really gets you interested. As I was working through the manga, I found myself dying to know what was going on with Kagetora. And yet, I have mixed feelings about this approach. Remember what I said earlier? These early chapters are just so okay. This is a big reason why. While this slow, drip-fed approach is effective in getting the audience's attention, it ends up being too effective, overshadowing the self-contained plots of the individual chapters. Like, right after we get a good look at Akitora in chapter 5, this thread of Akitora and Kagetora's relationship disappears for like 2 chapters as the cast goes to the beach. These beach chapters aren't bad, they're actually pretty fun, but it feels a little weird to go from a major reveal to only having the major conflict kinda sorta vaguely referenced in a single panel. I had to force myself to not play Small Saga, a game I'm live streaming by the way, like and subscribe, click the links below, and actually finish the manga. It was only on my second and third rereads when I was already aware of the payoffs that I could really vibe with these slower early chapters. Cutting away from things is a pretty common tactic in manga, just look at Jujutsu Kaisen. We went from Sukuna vs Yuji to Kenjaku vs Takaba, but I feel like the cutaways in Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger aren't handled as well. Comparing cutaways, the fight with Kenjaku is interesting in of itself, which thankfully also applies to Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger's beach chapters. But Kenjaku's fight flows much better since we literally see him watch what just happened in the main plot on his phone, connecting point A and B of the cutaway. The fight also starts with the implication that it's building to something since we see the good guys connive and plan behind the scenes. The beach chapters don't have that. They seem like a weird interruption to an ongoing story, something totally disconnected from what we were building to. The idea of them even going to the beach is introduced in the same chapter it starts. Thankfully, the payoff for getting through these slower early parts is really good. It happens in chapters 9 and 10, which is basically one large flashback answering the question of Kagetora's past and how he met Jiro. In the past, Kagetora's entire family was quite close, but they slowly drifted apart. I really like how the manga is themed around food, so to illustrate this point, we see Kagetora eating alone. And it's that drifting apart that Kagetora never really got over with, especially in regards to his older brother. He was in a much worse spot than we see him in before he meets Jiro by happenstance. There's something about eating with someone that brings Kagetora out of that slump he found himself in for so long. Throughout the series, we're also given glimpses of Akitora to understand him in a way Kagetora doesn't. He's a kind-hearted doctor who has a bad habit of scowling, but that's just because he has to squint to see without his glasses. Unbeknownst to Kagetora, it's revealed that the reason Akitora drifted apart, studying so hard to become a doctor, is because of the time Kagetora got sick. He studied and studied, working so hard to become a doctor so he could try and make his younger brother better and they could eat together again, although that ironically kept it from happening. It also points to another thing that I like. At around this time, during my first read of the manga, I realized that my expectations were subverted in a really good way. Despite curry and ramen being in the manga's name, it honestly takes a back seat. Yes, most, if not every chapter has the characters going out to eat something. But the focus isn't actually on the food itself, as weird as it might seem. Let me try to explain it to you like this. You know how in Golden Kamui they'd sometimes go into detail about the food the characters are eating? Showing you how it was made, the ingredients and stuff like that. That doesn't happen in Ramen Wolf and Curry Tiger. The food itself is secondary to the real strength of the series and the actual point: relationships. Food's importance in the manga is as a mechanism by which characters make connections with others. That's why the dinner table was the focal point to show Kagetora drifting away from Akitora. It even impacts the smaller conflicts that make up the individual chapters. The antagonist of the beach chapters is Gozaki, but after the eating contest, he becomes fast friends with Kuroda. It even shows up in chapters 13 through 15, where we get Jiro's backstory through the bear Igarashi, showing how Igarashi made lifelong friends by bonding over food. The flashback with Igarashi is meant to parallel Kagetora's problem. Food was used to bridge the gap between Igarashi and those around him. And as Kagetora's stress begins to wear him out more and more, he's forced to face his proverbial demons and reunite with his brother. Kagetora gives Akitora a call and asks if he wants to grab something to eat as the manga ends. It's an ending I'm surprised with how much I vibed with. It resolves the conflict, that being Kagetora's relationship with Akitora, and uses the story's theming around food and connections clearly. The contrast and parallels between Kagetora and Akitora certainly help. Kagetora has trouble smiling, Akitora has trouble scowling, and they're both bad at reaching out to others, for example. If that's still too subtle, Kagetora literally means Shadow Tiger and Akitora means Bright Tiger. It's a shame that to get to the good ending, we have to trudge through a slow start. As I reread the manga, I did find myself liking it more. The characters are fun, and when I'm able to focus on the chapters, the plots are charming. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Jiro and Kagetora aren't actually gay. Which is weird because things certainly lean in that direction. Even the characters inside the manga float the idea at one point. I guess the author wanted to tell a platonic story instead of a romantic one, which I'm fine with. And now, because I don't have anything else to say, it's time for the Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werehog, Deku, Zora Chow, Choron, Garen Lafay, Dragging Yara, Anon RC, Lightning Shadow, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon and Miko, because foodies make the best company. And for our Super D-Tuber special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower in the peaceful spring breeze. Then Poor Mage with thoughts of a clear autumn sky. Followed by Hodari Lion and the worst day ever. Next, Sky King 64, a tiger to a tearful face. And finally, Mahagasaur, the butterfly dream. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe. As always, I'm your host Fury, signing out.